What do I want? All right. How's my mic? How does that sound?
Good.
You're sounding good on my end. Episode 308 here. In a San Francisco Giants. You know what I think it is? You know why I think you're wearing that hat? I think that you realized that the Red Sox are going to be trash and that the Giants have a chance to make the playoffs, and you're like, this might be my transitioning into a West Coast baseball fan.
I mean, it could be something like that. It works out because the Giants are National League. So, like, you know what I mean? I can always be like, oh, it's like, unless they play in the World Series, like, it's really not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that A's hat's looking pretty good, too. So I might just have to go full Bay Area with the fitteds for now.
I don't know if you could do A's. They're boycotting the team because they're not building the new stadium and they're trying to
I don't know. I haven't been here. It's not my problem.
um what a very weird, eventful week we had. I mean, away from hip hop and also just like in hip hop, like having that YSL shit go down, and then
I know.
Lil Key dying. Rest in peace to Lil Key. And then we have a Kendrick Lamar album to talk about. And then also there's a shooting at a Buffalo. There's a racially motivated shooting at a Buffalo grocery store. Like, was that last night or this morning? Like,
it was yesterday.
yeah. So there's just so much, and then on top of that, you have Roe versus Wade and all this stuff and all this.
Bro, and there's a shooting in Q's last night outside of Lucy's.
Yeah, like, and there was one outside of the Bucks game the last time that they played in Wisconsin. What a weird week. I shout out to everybody who is hurting in some sort of way because of all the, either you're mentally tired because of all the news, or you're actually directly have an impact, or I guess the news directly impacts you in whatever way it does. Like, shout out to you, because it's been a really hard week. But we do have a Kendrick Lamar album to talk about, and I guess that this is the start of the show. So welcome to the Cat Podcast, episode 308. It was pointed out to me, and I actually saw it in post-production when I was like editing and stuff like that, that I called it It's All Opinion Podcast. So that being said, this week this is the Cat Podcast. Last week that was the Cat Podcast. This is episode 308. Welcome. Thank you for the applause. Thank you for watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Anchor, and more. Hit the like buttons and subscribe to the channel. You don't have to do it now, but at some point, because we're talking Kendrick, there's going to be mad profound points that's going to be made. That's Taylor McLeod. I am Nate Sperlin. Follow OldMilk on Instagram and Twitter at OldMilk Media. Check out the OldMilk Spins playlist on Spotify and YouTube. And check out all the OldMilk content at oldmilk.com. We also have Old Milk merch coming out on Friday, May 20th. So that's huge too. Round of applause for that. And I think I got through everything. That being said, Taylor, how are you doing today?
Can't complain. Weather's getting hot. Summer's right around the corner. You can really start to feel it right now. I think every year it's like halfway through May, you really start to feel it, but It's really feeling like it. Like, I don't know, even just like, it's crazy to say, but even just how like it seems every summer now, the news gets insane and all the like, most nuts shit starts happening. It feels like it's gonna be another one of those years where every day you log on Twitter and the world's falling apart in a different way.
Yeah, can we get a break? Something like, it's like we as Gen Zers or millennials even just don't get that type of layover time between not having to worry about if the world is gonna end or whatever. Like, right. It was, yeah. I was making the joke earlier, and it was like 40 degrees or like 50 degrees, some type of cold shit in New York like 2 weeks ago, and now it's about to be 79 next week. And global warming is also a thing that we're not talking about because there's so much other shit happening right now. But that being said, this is a hip hop podcast, not a podcast for people who need to catch up on the news. That being said, we're going to catch you up on hip hop. This is your weekly talk through hip hop. As always, this is the Kendrick Lamar episode. Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, ultimately his TDE finale and his PG Lang debut at the same time. I guess they kind of coincide, but we were talking about this like last week. It does, double albums don't really matter as much in terms of streaming or anything like that. In fact, I didn't really know where the first album started and where the last one ended. Like, it doesn't show up on the phone. You have to go to the computer to see that in whatever way. But 18 tracks in total, an hour and 13 minutes long. I would assume, and based on how it broke down on the computer, each album is 9 minutes, is 9 minutes, 9 tracks long. So just putting that out there as well. Featuring Blast, Amanda Reefer, Sampha, Taylor Page, Summer Walker, Ghostface Killah, Kodak Black, Baby Keem, Sam Dew, Tana Leone, and Beth Gibbons. Do you want to start talking about the album itself, or do you want to talk about the controversy and put that to the side real quick?
That's up to you. You're the host.
All right. So there's two points of controversy on this album. The first one is the use of Kodak Black on the album, which people are saying it kind of platforms him and gives him a voice, and that is a valid critique. I also think that on the other side, with the general theme of the album being Black trauma, I think that in terms of understanding where Black trauma can come from, in understanding that the people who may be doing the harm are the most traumatized in certain aspects. I think that Kendrick was trying to use Kodak to further his point and use him as an example of, or just a symbolism of Black trauma, which I think it makes sense, but at the same time, is it worth it? And I guess based on all the criticism and the backlash that he's getting from that, I guess that ultimately it's not. Additionally, the use of the F word on Auntie Diaries, which he does it not fuck, the anti-gay, the anti-LGBTQ F word. The use of that on that song was interesting as well. Probably shouldn't have done it. He does kind of bring it full circle and compare it to a white person saying the N-word and stuff like that, which I like. It's a full circle thing, but ultimately, I guess the use of the word could turn people off at the same way that the use of Kodak on this album could turn some people off to it as well. So those are the controversies. But that being said, Taylor, what did you think about? Well, first of all, what do you think about the controversies as a whole? And then what do you think about the album itself?
I think it's interesting to look at because listening to other parts of Kendrick albums, had they come out in different times, I'm sure there would have been controversy about certain parts of those albums. And released in 2022, right now, where everything is an immediate social media post. Like, we were 40 minutes into the album being out, and I was already seeing like the controversies bubbling on Twitter. So I think it's interesting because, to me, there are certain things that shouldn't be done, and there's certain things that aren't necessarily given a pass, but art isn't supposed to have smooth edges all the time. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be rough. It's supposed to be art. It's supposed to come from someone, and I think that was the intention with, the use of that word and the inclusion of Kodak throughout the album. I don't know. You and I have talked about it before. I disagree with like the whole, no matter how it plays into the themes of the album. And obviously with an album like this, it's hard for me and people like me to really comment on certain aspects, because it's not something that, I can't relate to certain parts of this album, and that's fine. It's not like albums aren't supposed to be, universal. They're not supposed to be one size fits all for everybody. So when it comes to how, the use of, him on 3 songs fits into certain themes, there isn't a lot of space for me to comment, but I think there's this feeling around specifically Kodak right now where he is he is almost like the artist for rappers or, you know, other people to attach themselves to. Because I've seen fashion designers, I've seen other, you know, other artists attach themselves to him as this way to be like, we don't care about not necessarily what he's done, but the feelings towards him or the backlash that's going to come from using him. And in that way, it feels a little bit, and I hate to make this generalization or comparison, it feels a little bit like Chappelle standing on stage and being like, railing against all the people who are gonna, you know, drag him or try to end his career because the jokes he makes. So in a way, it kind of feels like a fuck you to everyone who's gonna complain about it. But at the same time, there's a reason why everyone's gonna complain about it, and it's a valid reason. It's not something to just overlook and be like, oh. And also, like, because of what Kodak has done and the reason the controversy follows him, it's much harder to be like, all right, here's this person who's been through, you know, whatever and done this and done that, and be like, but we're still riding with him. It's like, I feel like there are other people who could have done the same thing that he did and had the same effect if used in the same way.
I agree.
And I think that's where I understand why it was him, because it is like he has Kendrick has multiple lines where he's like, you know, I'm more Kodak Black than this, or, you know, whatever. And he does, like, and I hate to have the cancel culture conversation because it has been like beaten to death over the last 2 years or so, but he does have multiple lines where he's like, oh, like fuck cancel culture, whatever. And it's like, all right, if that's the reason you're doing this, then I don't necessarily agree with using him on the album if that's the only reason, because then it feels like it's like, first of all, commodifying this artist who I don't like. It doesn't need to be, I don't know. It's just like, doesn't need to be commodified. And there's other people that could have been used. And especially this like trend of standing next to abusers in a way to be like, fuck cancel culture is very strange. Like it's easy to make the comparison between Kendrick and Ye in that sense, but it's just like a weird thing that not all these artists, but multiple artists have done at this point, where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to stand with this person despite these charges against them. But, and I don't even know if that's the thought process. I think that's
I don't think that was the thought process. Because I think throughout and Kendrick talks about it in some songs, he talks about just a lack of accountability and how that could also be a form of like that. The idea of not being able to hold yourself accountable is a trauma response within that. So I think that overall what Kendrick is trying to make a nuanced point. I don't know. One, I don't know how willing people are to receive it in the first place. And I think that's something that should have been calculated beforehand. And two, if people aren't ready to receive that nuanced point through this music, is it worth the attempt in the first place? Because the main point, which I agree with, that was the cause of the issue with Kodak being on the album, is that Kodak hasn't been accountable for what he has done. And that is true. That is 1000% true. It's just a matter of, would that also characterize as a trauma response? And if the theme of this album is Black trauma, where's the place for that conversation in the whole conversation of trauma in the first place?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's difficult to have certain conversations in the era that we're in, where it is so black and white. And if you don't, and certain topics don't deserve nuance. Certain topics are like, and I would argue that this is one of those times that doesn't necessarily deserve nuance, specifically in this case. But I don't know. I think that, and obviously, like, Tyler the Creator got some backlash last year, but the biggest song on his album of the year had Youngboy on it. And people were blasting that. People were loving that. Like, it became a TikTok thing. It became a, you know, like, I've heard so many people be like, oh, I love this album. I love the growth that Tyler the Creator has made. I love, from, you know, the shit that he was saying on Goblin and all on Wolf and stuff like that. And for for people to champion his most recent work as like this like all otherworldly, you know, revolutionary thing. And then he's on Twitter being like, young boy's a sweetheart. So it's like, all of this stuff comes with other stuff. But like, that's what art is. And that is how things break down. And it's not always going to be perfect. And Kendrick talks about that on Savior. And whether or not I agree or disagree with how things are presented or who's included on what, it has been a part of, and people are going to be like, oh, it's a hip hop thing. No, it's like it's an art thing. It's an art thing. And in a lot of these people,
I also, not to cut you off, I also
you're good.
have a tough time believing that if it wasn't a hip hop, like if this wasn't a hip hop album or we aren't talking about hip hop artists, the same backlash is there. Like I feel like some of it is also just because hip hop is under a microscope right now and everyone's trying to figure out or trying to say something is wrong with hip hop. And there are valid things in what people say in terms of this is something that hip hop does that shouldn't be allowed and stuff like that. There are valid things in that, but it just seems like it just seems like there's a lack of consistency in terms of people. Like it seems like people are having this energy for against Kodak Black and against Kendrick Lamar for having Kodak Black, but the question does need to be asked: would they have the same energy if it was their favorite artist doing shit? Like, for example, Lil Durk has Morgan Wallen on one of his songs.
Right.
Morgan Wallen is saying the N-word. That's not okay. I didn't really see the same issue with that. And Lil Durk, not to say that Lil Durk is on the level of Kendrick Lamar, but Lil Durk is continuously growing in his reach. And it's just, I don't know, like I'm just looking for the consistency is all I'm saying.
Well, it's because it's Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
Like it's because it's Kendrick. If Drake did it, it'd be the same thing. Mm-hmm. If Cole, like, didn't Cole have him on the project last year? Or there was like some link somewhere. Regardless, even Cole, and there's no offense to J. Cole because he is obviously one of the greats of our generation, but he's not. It's Kendrick.
Yeah,
that's why this has happened. It's like everyone. There was like very limited promotion for this album, and it's still the most excited I've.
Part 5.
Right, it's still the most excitement I've seen for an album, and it helps that he took a 5-year. There's a 5-year gap in there. Or a 3-year gap if you count like the Black Panther soundtrack. Mm-hmm. Regardless, like obviously there's more excitement, but it's because it's the first or second biggest rapper in the world.
Yeah,
that's why this is like that doesn't absolve him of criticism, and like we can get into the music. Because like I don't necessarily have a lot of criticism of the music, but
I think the music is. I think the only thing you can like, if you had to poke a hole in the album, it's the controversies that we just discussed. But other than that, if you're looking, the track list is pretty much bulletproof as far as I'm concerned in terms of how the execution of the music is pretty much bulletproof. I mean, where do you want to start since we're transitioning to the music now?
I mean, we can just go top to bottom, honestly, like not song by song, but I think from the very beginning, the intro track, and here I'll bring the track list up just so
United I actually have like a lot of songs written. I have United.
Oh, perfect.
Here, then United in Grief.
You just United in Grief, like the instrumental is real chaotic. It's really fast. And so the first time I listened to it, I was like, it's overwhelming a little bit, but the more I listen to it and the more I can like, and you know how this goes, like you can like almost like flatten the instrumental in your head so you can really hear the words. Like it's a perfect intro to this album, and it sets the tone for the rest of the project, which I think is really important. And you know how I feel about second tracks. I feel that N95 does a great job of the same thing.
I love the concept of N95. I think that I like how he takes the idea of people being anti-maskers and kind of attaches that more in a societal sense in terms of everybody's wearing a mask, talking about like people with chains and talking about like the things that people buy to make themselves look or whatever, or be whoever they want to be. It's still a mask at the end of the day. And like, instead of like, it's not just okay, well, fuck COVID masks, take your mask off. Like, let's all be normal or whatever like that. It's more so like, we don't really need to, we can just be ourselves. We don't really need to buy things or be materialistic in a way where it masks who we really are or trying to fit in or whatever like that. So I kind of like that concept as well. I didn't really get that until the second listen, but I do like that the subject matter there I think that it's a good continuation of the first one where he's talking about how everybody is grieving, like everyone has a different grieving process.
Yeah. I think the second verse in N95 in terms of classic Kendrick that we've grown accustomed to, especially over the last decade, because I feel like Kendrick, even Drake was popping before we were necessarily old enough to really like be there for the beginning of an artist and really see like their ascension. Like I vividly remember Good Kid, Mad City coming out and the lead up to it. So it's like, for someone that we've grown so accustomed to, you know, hearing their evolution and hearing when they kind of snap and go into that mode, like I've been listening to Nipsey Hussle's Victory Lap a lot, and on Dedication, like hearing that like real like West Coast Kendrick, like I think the second verse in N95 is probably the closest thing we get to that on either of the albums included on this project. So I like N95 for that reason, especially because it's right in the middle. There's 3 verses, and that second one is like, all right. Especially with how I feel about second tracks, like hearing that, I was like, okay, we're here. Like this is a Kendrick album. This isn't like a abstract art piece. This is a Kendrick album.
So moving, we do have Father Time where Kendrick talks about the concept of daddy issues in men in terms of not having that same emotional connection with their father because of patriarchy and toxic masculinity and stuff, like whatever you want to point to. It's something that happens. And that's really the song that spurred my thought about the idea of a lack of accountability being a trauma response, because he also says like, daddy issues kept me competitive. That's a fact, nigga. I don't give a fuck what the narrative. I'm that nigga. Like that's him essentially saying like, because of this, I'm not accountable to myself because of either a lack of a father figure or a lack of a supportive father figure. Right. Additionally, he goes on to say, when Kanye got back with Drake, I was slightly confused. Guess I'm not as mature as I think. Got some healing to do. That's the next line after that. So I think all in all, that all comes together to kind of point out how there are different ways where the ways that trauma responses in men can appear is what I got from that song.
Yeah.
Specifically Black men.
I think it starts to explore, because on Good Kid, Mad City, we got this look into Kendrick's life growing up, right? Like we really got a look into Kendrick Lamar as a teenager, pretty much. And really like, with the exception of a couple tracks that were like, you know, the Recipe or Compton or stuff like that, stuff with Dre, because that's so big. And like, but on that, we really got a look like 6-7 years back in Kendrick's life. Now we're getting a look back. A lot of this stuff reminds me, and granted, there's a lot of stuff from his childhood, but this song kind of starts for me where he starts looking back at that Good Kid, Mad City era when he really became the superstar and started dissecting it. Because on Good Kid, Mad City, like his dad is in a lot of the skits. And it's like
talking about dominoes and shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this like part of that, and we got this introduction to this figure at that point, and now a literal decade later, we're learning, and it's stuff that you could have put together, you know, by yourself listening to those skits, or just like, you know, knowing certain structures and how certain things work, but really like getting like the full story and like, or at least Kendrick's like, you know, emotions on this thing. I think this really is another tone setter for like how he looks back. Obviously Worldwide Steppers, he talks about some of his, you know, his other, you know, things he had going on during the Good Kid, Mad City era. But I think this song really starts the looking back process. And after N95 felt like a commentary on a lot of current modern stuff, this was kind of like all right, this is going to be a project that weaves in and out of time. Like, it's not just going to, it's like, I think a lot of people expected him to be like, just only talking about what's going on in the real world today. And, you know, coming as this like all knowing, all brilliant presence. And it's like, no, he unpacks like pretty much his whole life on this album.
He's not our savior.
No, exactly.
He shouldn't be. Yeah. Like he shouldn't be he shouldn't be. Since I just referenced it, let's jump around a little. Track 14. First of all, track 13, Savior Interlude, Baby Keem, amazing job as always. Yeah. I'm really starting to love just his regular I'm a rapper flow.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to enjoy that. But the track's Savior itself, track 14 is dealing with the concept of celebrity. And I like how he uses the lines, niggas tight-lipped, fuck who dare to be seen. Oh, I didn't put comments here. Okay, you're gonna have to work with me here. Niggas tight-lipped. Fuck who dare to be different. Seen a Christian say the vaccine, the mark of the beast. Then he caught COVID and prayed to Pfizer for relief. Then I caught COVID and started to question Kyrie. Will I stay organic or hurt in this bed for 2 weeks?
Damn.
Yeah, like that's a valid one. He also had some other ones talking about how I think he mentioned Future for sure as not being someone's savior about
yeah, Future should go get you that money counter.
Yeah. Who else? There were 2 other artists that he referenced. I'm blanking on
he
them
said
right now.
He said Future told me go get that money counter. LeBron made us give him his flowers, but he is not your savior. I can't remember the other 2. I know Future and LeBron are I think the last 2.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot working with this album as we're talking about it. I'm still realizing things and I'm still digesting it. Here he's talking about the celebrity culture and how celebrities are put on a pedestal and how people essentially, if you're that dedicated and you're that deep into it, worship celebrity. And he's kind of taking a hammer to that and saying that's not something that should be done, which I think I agree with. I think that sometimes people go a little too far. Like, I don't know, like Lil Durk beefing with NBA YoungBoy has nothing to do with you unless you actually know whoever. Like, there's no need to be like, okay, well, we don't play Lil Durk here because I fuck with NBA YoungBoy. Like, there's no need to do that at all. And I think that just that within itself, the idea of celebrity worship is a topic that we could probably go on for an hour about trying to unpack. Even when you add in the athlete component, which are like celebrities as well, when you add into that and you talk about, because we love the NBA, we talk about NBA Twitter and how people stand and stuff like that. I think that just talking about the concepts on this album, I think that the goal of this album was to start conversations. And I think that it's clear that the album got the job done in that aspect.
Yeah, I think Savior is really interesting for 2 reasons. On To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, I feel like Kendrick was so far in his own artistic world that we didn't necessarily, because he can get so deep in so many layers underneath what he's the issues he's addressing, even if you like understand it or you can like, figure out what he's talking about. He's normally got so many like cryptic layers on top of stuff. This one, he's literally like, no, Future, not your savior. LeBron, who a lot of people talk about, like, all right, he has no blemishes, no whatever in the past 2 decades. No, he's not your savior either. Like, it's an interesting way for Kendrick to reveal that he is very tapped into like what's going on in the world of celebrity, in the world of, athletes and entertainment, but also like how fans interact with that, because it is strange. I know we've talked about how when certain people act like they like know an entertainer's kids or like an athlete's kids and stuff, like there's a level weird of being like, all right, if someone publicizes their kid and it can be like, all right, like it's a cool thing to be like, see these people parent their children. But some people who act like they like, and the perfect example we talked about is like with like Deuce Tatum, like Jason Tatum's kid, where like Celtics fans are like, yo, like, oh, I got babysitted for him back in 18. It's like, no, you didn't. Like, so I think it's a whole, I don't know. It's all interesting. Yeah. But talking about that Savior interlude, I think Baby Keem did an amazing job on that. And I feel like you can hear, obviously Keem's on the album a couple times, even when he's not credited, there's still little like patches of his vocals. I think you can tell, like when they said they were bored and, learning new languages and speaking in different languages on Keem's album, I think you can start to tell that because sometimes their flows are so like overlapped that you're like, all right, yeah, these two are definitely related. Like, it's like funny because Kendrick's like 34, Keem's like 20 or 21, but you can tell, you're like, damn, these people have like a very similar artistic brain in the way that they come out. Maybe they're like learning it together, but I had like casual listener kind of like hip hop music in general text me, be like, yo, I had to Google one Kendrick verse to make see if that was Keem or not. And I was like, all right, that's a you problem. But also, like, yeah, you can tell that
we listen to real rap over here. We know.
Yeah,
we can tell the difference.
Right. You can tell that you can tell they're related. And
still can't tell the difference between Pusha T and Malice though. I'll cop to that. But
I think the telling Keem's story more from Kendrick's perspective, because we've heard it a bunch of times from Keem's perspective on the album, in interviews, and to hear Kendrick come from a place where he was like the superstar cousin, because even before he was a superstar, he was still on TDE, he was still known, like he was known from like 2008, 2009. So it's like to hear it come from the perspective of Kendrick and talking about how he was seeing the Keem situation, because we know how Keem's talked about it, how there were issues and they weren't in contact, and to hear Kendrick address that from his point of view, I think was really cool. And I think it just adds into this element of this album. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about actual therapy on it, but this whole project feels like a therapy session, and it feels like the album that Kendrick made for himself, as opposed to making it for us.
Yeah,
and I mean us in like a fan sense,
yeah,
because obviously he did make it for people. But
going back, and this is probably the last point before we get to favorite tracks. On the Heart Part 5, I believe he has a line where he talks about where he's basically saying, I understand that I'm going to lose some of you with this album. And him, like, that's basically, like, I think that this album has such a niche target demographic. I think that the demographic that Kendrick is targeting appreciates what he's doing. But I can see how, because Kendrick is such a wide-ranging art, like essentially everybody, no matter what the background is, understands that Kendrick Lamar exists. Yeah. Knows a Kendrick Lamar song, probably. And understand him being able to have the foresight, or I guess the ability to predict that he may lose some people with this album, and being able to say that or rap that on the Heart Part 5, I think is really I think it just goes to your point about how tapped in Kendrick really is, and how aware of the world or society he is. I think that's the reason why we're able to essentially assume that he's going to give us some type of thought through social commentary in every single time he delivers. But that being said, to kind of put a bow on it, what are your favorite tracks on this new Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale, and the Big Steppers?
So my favorite song, because summer's coming up and the instrumentals are so perfect for it, Die Hard with Blast and Amanda Reefer is amazing. So Die Hard, Father Time, I really like Rich Spirit. Count Me Out's great. Savior Interlude, Savior. And then I think Mother I Sober is a really beautiful song.
I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite, so I'll just like list the songs that I think are worth the listen in the first place. I'll say United in Grief. I mean, all the songs are, the whole album is worth it, but if I had to select 5 or however many, I'd probably say United in Grief, Father Time, We Cry Together. We didn't even get to that. That's a depiction of an argument between two people in a toxic relationship. I think it's pretty accurate just based on like what you hear walking up and down the streets in New York and seeing different people interact with each other. It's pretty accurate. It's a pretty accurate story. Just the way, and also the artistry of having both sides rap towards each other is, I love it. Listen to that.
Yo, Taylor Page got Kendrick.
Yeah.
Ruined
him. Yeah.
Ruined him.
Additionally, Savior, Auntie Diaries is definitely something that you should listen to. Mr. Morale, and also Mother I Sober. He also references a lot on this album about how he references a lot about the fact that about the unspoken, the conversation that should be had and needs to be had more about Black sexual abuse in general, and on the song Mr. Morale, he talks about that a little bit more, talking about how some rappers may have been abused and that's why they are the way that they are and stuff like that, which I think is also something that is great that he shined a light on. But great album, probably the album of the year. Definitely have to listen to it more and digest it more. It's not something that you can take your favorite songs and just not listen to the rest. Like, it all fits together. Yeah, that being said, This has been the Cap, episode 308. That is Taylor McLeod, who is a Boston Red Sox trader, a Benedict Arnold there. That's Benedict Arnold.
It's AL and NL.
That's the there's universal DH now. I don't think you can make that. I don't think you make that claim anymore. God.
Yeah.
The Giants pitcher hits? No? Oh, might as well be AL at this point. All right. He's gonna hopefully watch the Celtics win, but I'm kind of concerned about that because Game 5 kind of scared me off. It did. That scared me off.
All right. But the Bucks Game 4, like Bucks did the same thing in other games. They fell apart.
That's true. But like I expect it from them. I don't expect it from the Celtics. This current Celtics.
You expect it from the world champ for the best player in the world?
Yeah, I mean he's not the best player in the world, but he's like top 5.
All right.
Top 5.
I'm not letting you
best.
No, all your narratives are at the playoffs.
I mean, I'm just saying what I like from my best player in the world is the ability to score without committing an offensive foul. Would be nice.
I can't wait till you're a Jimmy Butler stand. I can't wait till out of nowhere.
You mean another?
I've been with Jimmy Butler since Marquette.
You mean another guy who could score without offensively fouling him?
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Tatum's not a 1 though, so I don't know what he's gonna do.
Me neither. You're right. You're right.
To prove he isn't 1, he's gonna have to put up like 63, 13, and 10 tonight and be like, yeah, all right, maybe next year.
I'm not gonna lie though. If Luka Doncic pulled this off, oh boy, Game 7 against Phoenix. If he pulls that off, I'm forever grateful.
I know.
That's all I'm gonna say.
For that one too.
No, me too. But this has been the Cap. Thank you for listening and watching. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at OldMilk Media. Check out the Old Milk Spins playlist on Spotify and YouTube. Old Milk merch coming out on May 20th. It's Friday. Check out all the Old Milk content on oldmilk.co, and we will be back when hip hop tells us to be. Thank you for watching.